I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason.
Golden Spiral Media presents the Friday the 13th rewatch.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Join Corey and Nathan each week as they slash their way through campgrounds, woods, Manhattan, hell, and space as they discuss another installment in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Hey, wasn't that the road up for Camp Crystal Lake back there?
Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. Like our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatch podcast. And follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Legend has it that Jason came back to get even. Every now and then, the murders just start up.
Today we're discussing Friday the 13th, the final chapter, starring Eric Anderson, Julie Aronson, Peter Barton, Kimberly Beck, Crispin Glover, Corey Feldman, and Joan Freeman, with Tom Savini and Ted White as Jason, directed by Joseph Zito. Welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast. I'm Corey, and holy Jesus jumping Christmas shit.
And I'm Nathan, and the man responsible for the murders in Wessex County this past week is at this moment in the Wessex County Medical Center morgue. So we should just roll credits and go home, yeah? What do you reckon?
Final chapter. We're all done. Jason's dead.
They keep killing him, and somehow he keeps coming back. And here we are for Friday the 13th. The final chapter.
No numbers in this one, just the final chapter. So before we roll into anything, we do want to remind our listeners that we are indeed part of the Golden Spiral Media Podcast Network, where you can send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com. You can type a message or use the SpeakPipe widget to record your own voice, and you can even call 304-837-2278, and also head over to facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia and follow on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. All right, so let's begin as we always begin. Let's check out the trailer.
Let's do it.
Three times before, you have felt the terror, known the madness, lived the horror. But this is the one you've been screaming for. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Jason is back. He moves like a shadow, dark and silent.
Sorry you changed your mind?
He never utters a word. He doesn't even seem to breathe.
Where the hell's the corkscrew?
He simply, mindlessly, mercilessly kills. But now, Jason's reign of terror is over. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Jason's unlucky day.
All right, welcome back. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, opened on April 13, 1984. And it actually did very, very well. In the first weekend, it opened to $11 million gross. And the budget, I think, was very little. It was $2.6 million. And I think overall, it kind of went on to make about, I think it was 32 million $900,000 $980,000 at the US box office alone. So that's not including worldwide figures. So, I mean, I actually couldn't really find much information about international gross. We're just talking the US here. And as per usual, Corey, these things make money. People liked these movies. Like, when these movies came out, I'm not going to use the word event cinema, but it was certainly like, let's go to the movies and watch the new Jason chapter. Yeah, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's crazy that they can have such a small budget, yet make well over that budget back in its first weekend.
Yeah,
it's huge numbers in comparison.
Did very well, and in that first week it was up against such competition like Police Academy was in number 2 spot, which actually, you know, there's actually a bit of a connection between Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and Police Academy, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But there was Police Academy there, Romancing the Stone was out at the time, Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Splash, Moscow on the Hudson, Terms of Endearment was in its 21st week by that stage and had made $97 million. So yeah, as per usual, in the 80s, the competition was fierce, wasn't it, Corey?
That's pretty stiff competition. And of course, we talked about Police Academy back in the day. So it seems like we're in that era. It's cool to be able to sort of place movies that were out at the time so we can sort of see what era we're in. So
you did notice the connection between Police Academy and Friday the 13th. The guy in the morgue at the start of the film is Fackler. It's an actor named Bruce Marler, and he plays a bit of a turd in Friday the 13th. In Police Academy, he's the guy with the long-suffering wife.
It's funny. I remember watching the scene and thinking, God, that guy looks like Fackler from Police Academy. It's him.
Yeah, and this is the film that he made just prior to Police Academy. Actually, no, I tell a lie. He made this afterwards. He did Police Academy in 1984. Then he did Friday the 13th in the same year. So it was my mistake. Yeah, he actually did this slightly afterwards, and then Police Academy 2 the following year as well. So he certainly stayed busy. And to be fair, like he didn't really go on to have much of a career after this, but I think he showed up in Seinfeld as Rabbi Glickman, the guy that can't stop yabbing about Elaine's troubles.
And speaking of recognizable faces, Crispin Glover.
Oh my God. I think earlier in the week I messaged you just before I watched this film, and I was a bit excited because I said this is the first, Friday the 13th that there's going to be some recognizable faces, and I mentioned Crispin Glover and Corey Feldman. I had no idea these two guys were in this film.
It's crazy, isn't it? Crispin Glover's an odd actor, if you will, and I always thought, he did 2 reasonably straight edge roles, right? Yeah. And he was even still a bit kooky in Back to the Future, and then he did this Friday the 13th Part 4. After this is like where he just, took crazy roles. He ended up in Wild at Heart, which was a David Lynch film. So, and that kind of just launched him into like a series of crazy performances.
He's a bit of a strange actor that, he's certainly memorable. And, at the end of the day, he did do, Back to the Future. And truthfully, that's all he really needs to do. I'm not saying that he should be defined by that role, but he'll certainly be remembered literally forever in cinema folklore for that role. And isn't that kind of what you want as an actor? Like, that's kind of the ultimate goal, is to kind of leave some kind of lasting impression. And it's like what I was thinking about, Corey Feldman as well. It's like he's kind of evolved into this guy that was a child star, and he certainly kind of still works, but he's almost, I was going to say a joke. He's not really a joke. He's just a bit of a weird kind of guy. Like, he's just someone that you don't really pay much attention to. But when you actually think about his film history and what he leaves behind Friday the 13th Part 4, A New Beginning. Then he did The Goonies straight after, Stand By Me, The Lost Boys, The Burbs, Gremlins he showed up in for a moment. Like, these are not small films, man. Like if you had those films on your CV, you'd have that's a pretty impressive kind of filmography, just from a lasting perspective.
Yeah, definitely. These people are definitely leaving behind a legacy of roles that they will forever be remembered for. Now, did you know that Corey Feldman or Crispin Glover were in this?
No, I didn't. I had zero idea. I always kind of do my research prior to watching the film, which is kind of bad. I should probably do it the other way around. I did my research and I saw that Corey Feldman was like, oh, that's really interesting. And when I watched the film, he was young in it. Like, he feels really young, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely he does, yeah. And outside of, these two that we've been talking about, the only other person we can really point a finger at and go, we know that guy, was Kevin Bacon in the first one.
Yes.
That wasn't even a Jason movie. So.
Yeah, because I think we've always kind of joked that none of the actors had really kind of evolved or kind of went on to basically anything.
But, Crispin Glover's not without his eccentricities in this movie. He does have a crazy dance sequence, which apparently on the set, he was actually dancing to Back in Black by AC/DC. And that's kind of why it seems like it's a little out of time with the music that's playing.
It's a very strange scene. And it's quite funny, truthfully. Like when the scene kind of showed up and they started dancing like that, I thought, really? Is this really going to happen right now? Anyway, it is what it is. At the time of the release of this film, this installment in the Jason series contains the most nudity and gore, and I'll be truthful, man. It was something I noticed. It felt a little heavier in the violence, yeah? Did you agree?
Yeah. They've upped it slightly as it's gone along, I think. We had that kill in the last one, the guy walking on his hands and then you see him sliced up in the rafters. Like, that was gory. This one takes it up a notch and gives you several of those kind of kills.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the titties going on.
Oh my God, there's a lot going on. It's relatively kind of well made. I don't know, man. You could almost watch any of these movies without watching any of the prequels and not really miss anything. They're kind of strange. They really do kind of wipe the slate clean quite regularly, and they start kind of fresh. Obviously it's nice to have a little bit of kind of past knowledge about Crystal Lake, but you could totally watch this film without kind of knowing any of that and just it would be fine, yeah?
Well, having said that, looking at the timeline that I've been going over week by week here, this film does, again, pick up where the last film left off. Jason was hacked in the head with a machete and left there dead. This film picks up right there.
I know.
With him being cut off, and then proceeds to take place over the next 2 days, which would be Sunday the 15th and Monday the 16th. So we're long past Friday the 13th at this point.
Now, they did release this film intending it to be like genuinely the last in the series, but I think box office receipts has kind of got the better of them, and they just felt the need to kind of continue. And to be truthful, you can't really blame them, can you? There's not a lot of investment in these films, and they make money.
Yeah, well, you can put that down to Paramount, okay? And Paramount were the people behind releasing these films. They weren't the people behind making them, of course. These films were made independently and then sold to Paramount for distribution rights. But yeah, the guy making these films, producing them, said, okay, this is it. We want to move on. We want to try new things. And they genuinely considered this to be the final chapter. And then, of course, money. Paramount said, no, we're going to go ahead and make some more of these.
Which is, that's fine, but it is what it is. Now, it also turns out that the director was a guy named Joseph Zito. Now, Joseph Zito had done a film a few years earlier called The Prowler. I'm not too, that's a film that I think I've heard of it, maybe, but I certainly haven't seen it. Have you?
I don't think so.
Yeah. But he had a fairly combative relationship with most of the actors on set, including the guy that played Jason. Due to the production's low budget, several actors actually had to perform uncomfortable or dangerous stunts themselves, including Judy Aronson, who was actually required to remain submerged in a lake in near freezing temperatures, and Peter Barton, who was actually slammed into the shower wall when Jason attacked him. Ted White, who actually portrays Jason, actually advocated for several of the actors requesting that Barton be allowed to use a crash pad and threatening to quit when director Joseph Zito refused to allow Aronson to get out of the lake between takes. Apparently White and Zito ultimately developed some kind of combative relationship on set, which resulted in White demanding his name actually be removed from the credits, calling it a big piece of shit.
Wow.
So yeah, truthfully, I don't think the film's quite that bad, but I can see his perspective if he had a fairly distasteful experience on set. It sounds like Joseph Zito was kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. It does seem like it was a rough shoot. It wasn't even just the feud between Ted White and Joseph Zito. Apparently, Ted White actually kind of had beef with Corey Feldman, too. He thought Corey Feldman was a bit of a bratty kid and didn't like him very much. And apparently there's the scene towards the end of the movie where Jason busts through the window and pulls Tommy out of the house. And apparently to sort of, get a little dig at Feldman, who had been acting like a little turd the whole time, according to Ted White. He intentionally waited a few beats from the timing that they'd worked out until Corey Feldman sort of let his guard down, and then he bust through and grabbed him. It does sort of lend itself to having a more genuine reaction. Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. There's all kinds of stories of just combativeness between all these people.
Now, also, apparently Joseph Zito was actually initially set to both direct and write the screenplay for the film, but Zito apparently he claimed to the studio that he was not a writer, but they offered him such good money that he ended up kind of accepting the contract. Now, apparently Zito secretly used the extra salary he received for writing the screenplay to hire a third party named Barney Cohen to actually write the script. And the process actually involves Zito taking 1 hour a night phone calls with Phil Scuderi, whoever that is, to discuss the story and script for the film. Zito then met Cohen in a New York apartment to use the concepts Scuderi had offered, which they would then turn into script pages and be sent back to Scuderi for the conversation discussed again over the phone. Cohen remained the writing credit for the film, but Zito and Cohen, apparently they actually got into quite a bit of trouble from the Writers Guild of America for this practice. To be truthful, man, it all sounds very dishonest and kind of not that cool, yeah?
That does seem a little off. You don't pay somebody to write something and then have that person turn around and get a third and fourth party involved in the writing, one of which isn't even credited for their work.
So as the Jason series kind of gets on and the more money kind of gets involved, egos are starting to kind of get a bit out of control behind the scenes, I suspect. And anyway, it is what it is.
Well, and even coming down to the final cut of this film, there was a lot of stuff that Zito wanted to try and mandate on it, one of which was not using previous footage at the beginning of the film. As we know, all the films have started with kind of like a little recap.
Yeah, this is the first one that didn't do that.
So that's an interesting idea. And of course, all the other films have ended with some sort of weirdo dream sequence, some of which could be canon, some of which could just not be real. And especially the last one with Jason's mother jumping out of the water, like that made no sense.
Hey Corey, I'm just thankful we didn't have a shot of a guy taking a shit in this film.
I'm sure that's going to return at some point. I've got an image in my head.
Oh my God.
Another scene in one of these movies with someone taking a shit.
We'll see. I don't know why I'm so offended by that, considering there's cleavers in the skulls and people getting knifed through projector screens and all kinds of things,
But apparently they did actually film a weirdo dream sequence and they just scrapped it at the end. Apparently it wasn't very good. But apparently it did sort of reveal how Tommy and Trisha's mother died. But, as it stands with the film that we watch, it's going to remain pretty ambiguous.
Is there any more trivia you want to get into, or are you happy to kick off the main discussion?
Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so Friday the 13th, the final chapter. All right, so we actually do pick up where we left off, actually the very night over at Higgins Haven, where Jason was dead, with a machete in his face, and he's being carted off to the morgue.
What's it going to take to kill this guy, man?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're going to get straight into a Halloween 2 ripoff, and we're going to have Jason spring back to life whilst at the morgue and start killing morgue attendants and nurses.
This is after you have a really extended sequence where the nurse or attendant or whoever it is totally trying to get fresh with his kind of nurse girlfriend, in the morgue, and he keeps kind of whisper into her ear and come on baby, we can do this now, and all that kind of stuff.
With the corpse of a multiple murderer right there in the room with them. He's watching the weirdest exercise video I have ever seen.
Right.
It's like 4 women shaking their butts in a circle.
Oh my god.
Oh man, it is such a weird sequence.
And they would have shot that. I'm fairly certain that would not have been like TV, like physical. They would have shot that like gym kind of video, and it's like all these girls in these like really little kind of leotards, like shaking their butt really clearly to the camera and doing all kinds of things. It's hilarious. And like, doesn't the nurse kind of like burn the coroner off a little bit, and so says, "Oh, not now, man." Like I think she gets cranky at him about something, and she leaves the room, and he kind of like starts watching the TV, and kind of all the like, it's like you can kind of tell what's going through his mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so bizarre because, yeah, she's so standoffish, but then she shows up in this office or whatever. It's probably still the morgue, actually, because Jason's body is right there, and they start getting it on. And for some reason, Jason's hand keeps, like, flopping to the side. It happens twice within, like, 5 minutes.
It's just crazy. It's a weird way to kind of start the film, and then out of nowhere, the coroner, Axel Burns, his name is, he's our first kill of the film, and let me just say, there's quite a few kills. There's 15 according to this list of people getting killed by Jason. So Jason's kind of getting through the business in the last 4 films, and he's going to do another 15, give or take, in this one. He gets a throat slit with a hacksaw.
You know, I actually do have to give them props for the shot of Axel putting Jason into the fridge. You know, he's sliding him into that, coroner's fridge, and this like breath, this cold breath comes up from the hockey mask. And why they took him to the morgue with the hockey mask on, I don't know, but yeah, it's that breath coming up as he's put in that cold storage, and I was like, ooh, that's creepy.
It is a bit creepy, isn't it? So Jason, we learn pretty quickly that Jason is alive. He kills the doctor with a hacksaw, the coroner, I should say, and then he also stabs the nurse with a scalpel. It's gross.
Yeah. They're really getting straight to the point now, We're at part 4 already. We need to give people what they came to see, right?
Exactly. So we then kind of shift away from the hospital after establishing that Jason is well and truly alive, and we meet our next group of, for use of a better word, but victims.
This is kind of strange, right? Because we're still at Crystal Lake, but I guess we're still continuing the format of sort of moving along the lake to a different area. And now we've got a house and a family that lives there. And then there's this house across the way that has been rented out to a group of teenagers for whatever they're doing there.
Yep. And the group consists of several people. You got Paul, his girlfriend Sam, Sarah and her boyfriend Doug, socially awkward Jimmy, who is the Crispin Glover character, and prankster Ted, who is fairly irritating, but he's kind of meant to be. So on the way to the cabin or whatever it is, the group actually stumble across. They actually stop for some reason somewhere, and they see a tombstone for Pamela Voorhees.
Yeah.
Just randomly. It's really strange, yeah?
Yeah, just out of nowhere, they just stumble upon this grave.
They also drive past a female hitchhiker, and she's like this overweight girl for like this really no reason whatsoever. They give her nothing to do whatsoever, and as they're kind of driving along, they have this conversation like, should we stop and pick her up, man, and doing all these kind of things, and for whatever reason they decide against it. I think she turns around and gives them the finger, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's got like a sign that she flips around, and
she flips around and says fuck you, or fuck
you.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? Why she's on a road that leads towards Camp Crystal Lake when she wants to hitchhike out of town, I don't know.
Especially when, like, if according to the timeline is correct, Corey, in the last 3 or 4 days, Jason has gone on like this relentless killing spree. And I mean, don't get me wrong, he's meant to be dead in the morgue. As far as the public are concerned, he's dead, but we know he isn't. And even if you didn't know he was dead, the last couple of days, there's been like 20 murders in the local area or something like that.
Nobody's talking about it. Yeah, like nobody's aware that there's just been a mass murder that's been taking place over several days now. And even though the killer's dead, yeah, we're just heading out to this house that we've rented right on the lake by where he killed all these people.
As they drive by the hitchhiker, they go by and she gets cranky, and out of nowhere Jason shows up and impales the female hitchhiker through the neck with a knife.
It's so weird too, because she's like chomping down on a banana. And they have this close up of her clenched fist, like squeezing out the rest of that banana. So weird.
So the teens arrive at the cabin and we get introduced to a new set of people that we haven't met before. They meet the neighbours Trish Jarvis and her brother Tommy. While going for a walk the next day, the teens actually also meet up with two local girls, some twin sisters, Tina and Terry, and they've suddenly decided to go skinny dipping with them for some reason. Now, apparently the whole Tina and Terry thing was meant to be a single role, but when they cast the role and found out that she was a twin, they actually changed the story item into a twin, so they thought they'd do it that way.
Nice. Yeah, those two are strange. I have a feeling they might actually be British as well. We'll talk about it actually when we get to a few clips. I have a clip with this weird inflection at one point, but it's crazy, right? It's like we said, there's been massive amounts of murders that have taken place this week, and these people are just strolling around the woods, meeting twin girls, going skinny dipping. The Jarvis family, like, they're just out and about doing whatever. Like, you think she'd keep her kids close by.
I would have thought so,
with
yeah.
all these murders that have been going on, but yeah, it seems like it's just the guy is dead, so let's all get fancy free again.
Yep.
It's bizarre.
Trish and Tommy actually happen upon the scene, and before they leave, Trish is actually invited to a party to take place that night. Afterwards, when all this kind of happens, their actual car actually breaks down, and Trish and Tommy meet a young man named Rob. Now, Rob's idea of why he's there is kind of a little unclear at that stage. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like, so many introductions going on here. All the teens with the Jarvis family, and then this guy, Rob, literally just, like, saunters into the scene. And it slowly becomes clear that he's there on a bit of a revenge kick.
Because it turns out, and again, spoiler alert for later in the film, but you find out that Rob's sister was one of the girls murdered, like, a couple of days earlier. Is that right? Is that the way you kind of get it?
One of the girls in part 2, and I looked it up, it's the girl who got stabbed with the spear while her and her boyfriend were having sex.
Oh my God.
He stabs them both through the bed.
Yeah, I remember.
That girl.
Okay, all right.
That is apparently his sister. And yeah, I don't know, the way he talks about it, it's as if it happened like years ago. And he's been researching forever.
Yeah, that's right.
And he knows about Jason, and he's out there looking for him, even though Jason is presumed dead. He's like, no, this guy can't be killed. I'm going out there and I'm going to track him down. It's still fresh in his mind. They probably barely had the funeral for her. Okay, this is the setup. All these teens are in this house across the way. Trish is being invited over. Tommy is the wild card here, right? We've never had a kid in a Friday the 13th movie before.
Yeah, and it's kind of refreshing in some kind of ways because it does increase the stakes slightly because you don't really think, like do you really expect them to kill how old's Corey Feldman in this film? Like 10, 11, maybe 12?
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, to tell you the truth. They live out in the middle of nowhere, so it seems like he wouldn't have a lot of friends either. I don't think there's a lot of people living nearby. And he seems to have this fascination with making monster masks and stuff, like really good looking ones too.
Yeah, like he's right into kind of, all the kind of the special effects and how all that kind of stuff works and whatnot. And yeah, he's a bit of a strange character, but he kind of, as I was kind of watching the film, you kind of liked him though. Like you didn't really want to see anything bad happen to him, yeah?
It's true. And it does make you wonder throughout, are they going to kill the kid?
It's not so much like, are they going to kill him? Like, can they go there? Like, is that something this film is allowed to do?
Yeah, it's true. But hey, man, they've killed a pregnant woman before. They killed that guy in the wheelchair. So
yeah, right.
Is it really beyond a Friday the 13th film to kill a kid?
A bit of a plot line that we've kind of gone over a little bit, and I really want to talk about it too, is the plot line between Crispin Glover and the Ted character. Crispin Glover plays Jimmy, right? And Lawrence Monosson plays Ted. Now, Ted is always he's like this suave kind of risky business guy. Like he's got that kind of look about him, doesn't he? Like with the shades and the haircut, and he really thinks he's a ladies' man, and he's always kind of giving shit to Jimmy. And doesn't he call him like a limp dick or something like that? Is that right?
Yeah, a dead fuck.
A dead fuck. That's it. He keeps calling him a dead fuck, and Crispin Glover gets really cranky about it, and he keeps sort of saying, "Don't call me that, man. Like, I really don't like that. Don't call." And he keeps calling him it, doesn't he? Like, he doesn't really take it seriously. And like, this Ted guy really does think he's all that and a bit more. And Crispin Glover really does come across as quite weedy. I actually do when you really think about it, Corey, it's no surprise Crispin Glover went on to do something else after these films, because he does kind of stand out amongst that group. Like, he's quite memorable in this film.
He's an oddball character, and it's almost like he's taken all this crap from Ted, but at the same time he's sort of giving it back as well. It's sort of like Ted is inspiring him in a way to be better, because, you know, moving forward, we're going to spend a lot of time with these kids over in the house. Yeah, they're skinny dipping, and then they end up back at the house, and there's this whole long drawn out sequence of them dancing and getting together, and then who's going to get together with the twins, and then, you know, one of the girls gets jealous about these twins sort of moving in on their guys. And that's our next kill. This is Samantha. She gets so annoyed that she has to leave the house, get naked, and go swimming. And she's out on this raft, and Jason stabs her right through the raft with his machete. It's a pretty cool kill, actually. And then Paul, who was, you know, being seduced, of course, goes looking for her, finds her dead in the raft, and Paul thinks he gets a spear right through the dick.
What is there, like, obsession with going after people's balls in these films? Like, why impale him in the groin of all places? It's just like, why make that creative choice? Obviously they're trying to be one up themselves, aren't they? That's the whole idea of these kills. Yeah, that's why some people feel these films are fun. Yeah,
well, I think it's that whole philosophy of, like, you know, the guys would take their girls to the scary movie, and the girl would snuggle up to them because the girl is the one that's freaked out by the movie. But they got to give something for the guys to feel uncomfortable about. So yeah, let's go for a nut shot.
So after we have Sam getting impaled in the groin with a harpoon gun, Terry actually rejects Ted's advances and actually wants to leave the party. So Tina instantly decides to move on to Jimmy, and the two actually instantly go upstairs to have sex, because that's what people do.
So yeah, I mean, this is a good halfway through the movie, and now we're really starting to get into the gory kills.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing's been set up. We've met all our characters. They've kind of established the whole concept of, and you know what, something I did appreciate in this film, like, as much as we kind of joked about the Rob character, you know, taking vengeance for his sister that got killed 3 days earlier. Like, I did appreciate the trying to connect the dots a little bit, as opposed to new set of teenagers. Jason shows up, kills them all, one survives, and we don't even hear from that one who survives again, or they get killed off really, really quickly. So I actually did appreciate some kind of family member maybe coming in to the fray, trying to, like, avenge their sister's death or something like that. I actually didn't mind that part of this film.
Yeah, I do have to agree. Even though you can look at it and go, it's a bit weird that this guy's here. Yeah, this is an infinitely better made film. It's like better looking, and
yeah, I agree, it is.
It's full of interesting people. I mean, sure, they've stacked it so we can have more kills, but there's a good group of teens here, you know, and I find all the stuff they're doing quite interesting.
I even think the quality of the actors is improved as well. Like, you can tell there's a little bit of experience, you know, in front of the camera, where maybe in the previous films there was some inexperience. They were certainly doing their best, but they were not skilled kind of actors, and I think the fact that their careers didn't really go anywhere certainly kind of attests to that fact slightly. But the fact that you got Crispin Glover, Corey Feldman, like, even the guy that played Rob, Eric Anderson, he looked like a familiar face to me as well. Maybe I'd seen him in something. In fact, I'm looking him up now, and he was actually in Star Trek The Next Generation. So he certainly hasn't gone up to many things, but I think he's a fairly familiar face. So yeah, I did appreciate that kind of aspect of this film. Before we get into the second half of our discussion, shall we listen to some clips, Corey?
Okay, so I've got a few clips from the first half of the film here.
Yep.
So this is the beginning of the film, with these weird EMTs showing up to pick up the corpse of Jason.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Where do you need it?
We got 10 of them. Yours is in the barn.
What's wrong with him?
He's dead. Yeah, they're all dead. You can pull it up over there.
All dead. Some emergency. Put her over there.
Oh, man. Hey, he's talking about the 10 in the bun. He's talking about the bikers. Those guys, yeah? Because they all got killed in the bun. Like, they got, like, strung up and whatnot. It was kind of nuts.
It's just a weird back and forth there. Where do you go? Where do you want him? He's dead. They're all dead. Such a strange way to put it.
Oh, my Lord. Anyway, what's the next clip?
All right, so, we've got Ted and Jimmy.
I did not say it. The computer did.
Yeah, well, there is no computer.
Aha! And there's no Betty either.
And I'm a dead fuck. Like I said, the computer don't lie. Oh, God, I'm horny.
Oh, my Lord, it's so funny. You know what? I'm really pleased you played that clip, man, because I totally forgot about the whole computer thing. Like, and the fact that, like, Crispin Glover gets really offended by what Ted is saying, and he takes his computer line really seriously. It's very funny.
Yeah, it really is. It's just so weird how horny Crispin Glover's character is. I mean, that's all those two ever talk about is getting laid.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, what's the next one, mate?
All right, so the next one. Oh, okay. This is the music from Crispin Glover's infamous dance sequence.
Cool, man.
And if this isn't the most 80s song you've ever heard, I don't think you're going to hear a more 80s song ever.
Nice.
No way, not tonight, no way, not today.
No way, not tonight.
It's very funny, isn't it? If you guys don't actually watch this film, I hope you do. If you just get nothing else from this podcast, just go to YouTube and Google Crispin Glover, Friday the 13th dance, and just watch that sequence, because it's really worth watching. You couldn't make it up. It's very funny.
Oh, man, it is so good. All right, so that's the clips from the first half of the movie.
Yeah, nice one.
All right, so where we left off with Tina going upstairs with Jimmy, and they're getting down, and while this is happening, Terry kind of feels like all the other guys there are kind of boring, and she's definitely not into Teddy. So she goes up and she tries to get Tina to leave with her. Tina just like tells her to get lost.
Go away. Like, I'm not leaving.
Again, they kind of got rid of this plot point in the last film, but they brought it back for this one. It started to rain outside, and Terry, like, she leaves in this like weird petticoat rain jacket that she's got with a bicycle. And yeah, Jason just like shows up and he like messes her up. She gets it the worst out of anybody in this movie. Like, he throws her against the wall and hits her with a pitchfork and then like forces her through the wall, and then later she's like pinned up to the window.
You're not wrong, man. It's pretty brutal. Like, and yeah, she totally kind of gets it. It's pretty intense. So after this happens, Sarah and Doug will actually come back to those two back at the party, and they're getting all hot and steamy in the shower. Meanwhile, Ted actually finds an old Stag film and brings it up on his home projector, which he suddenly found just randomly. So he's there by himself, high as a kite and drunk, most likely. He looks like he's having fun, and he's watching like old archival porn from the 20s and 30s and 40s or whatever it is, like black and white kind of skin flicks, and he's clearly having fun.
Yeah, this character is just so weird. He is so into these old black and white films of just women like dancing around topless and stuff. Like, he's got the weirdest laugh as well while he's watching.
I'd love to know if those films were actual archival skin flicks or are they, because you know what, they looked fairly authentic. Like, I kind of was watching them just going, they do look like old films. Like, they've done a pretty good job kind of messing those things up and making it look like, very retro, but it wouldn't surprise me if they shot them and just made them look like that. But I mean, this is pre-digital days, so it would have been hard to kind of make them look like that. You would have had to kind of go to some effort, but they did a pretty good job there, I thought.
Yeah. And this, I don't know, it's kind of used as a way to sort of distract Ted so everybody else can get killed.
Yes,
while
exactly.
this is going on. So they're sitting there watching it, and Sarah, she's the one who you think could kind of be the last girl. You know, she's the nice girl, and she's a virgin as well. But she makes the ultimate decision to go upstairs and have sex in the shower with Doug.
Yes, because that's what you do for your first time.
Exactly. So Jimmy and Tina are in the bedroom having sex. Doug and Sarah upstairs in the shower having sex. Ted is all by himself watching these skin flicks. And he kind of gets this look at one point as if, like, nobody's around. Maybe I could just rub one out.
Yeah, exactly. Because he walks towards the projector and starts like touching the screen and stuff or something like that. And then out of nowhere, there's like a snip on the projector and you hear the film kind of turning over and all you can see is light. So Ted kind of looks back and says, like, what's going on? Like, who's there? Like, who did this? I mean, it's, you know, from his perspective, though, he either thinks it's one of his, flatmates or friends, or it could just be a break on the projector. But, you know, as an audience, we know that something kind of happened, or you don't really know it exactly, do you? But you just assume that Jason's there. I mean, let's be truthful, Corey. We've watched 4 of these movies so far, and Jason is always there. Like, when weird shit kind of happens in these houses, and just like stuff breaks, or the lights go out, or the power goes out, or something like that occurs, Jason is never far away, is he?
You know, it's awfully weird that we're spending so much time with these kids, because while all this is going on, there has been another story developing with the Jarvis family.
Yeah, we haven't really spoken about them for a while, have we?
Right. So Mrs. Jarvis is just ambiguously killed in one of those, you know, like, what was his name? Steve Christie from the first one, where it's just like walking towards camera and then bzzz, and cut away.
And
so
that's
we
it.
Don't really know what happened to her. I don't know. It's like Tommy and Trish were out somewhere and they kind of come back and there's no power. So she randomly goes to try and find Rob out in the woods. And while Rob's out there, we kind of cut away to him. And he's in a tent and he sort of hears something out in the woods. And then he turns around because he hears something back at his tent and then finds that Jason has smashed his gun. And you're like, what? Smashed a gun.
If Jason actually wanted to get Rob, he certainly could have. He didn't really know to smash his gun, did he?
So Jason just took that little side tangent to go and do all this, and now he's going to go back to the house with the teenagers and kill some more people, starting with good old Crispin Glover, Jimmy.
Yeah, I know, who basically has his way with Tina, comes downstairs after like in this like triumphant kind of pose, like look at me, look what I've kind of done,
and check out these panties, who's a dead fuck now kind of thing.
I can't wait to tell Ted that kind of vibe. He gets a cleaver through the head or something like that, doesn't he? Like it's quite violent.
Yeah, you know, at the same time, because Ted's of course in the next room watching those skin flicks. Crispin Glover dies so silently, it's ridiculous. He gets a corkscrew through his hand and then a meat cleaver to the face. You'd think he would make a bit more noise, but instead he kind of just sort of gets this wide-eyed, open-mouthed expression as he gets that meat cleaver to the face. He's the one that Jason rips down as he stomps out of the house.
I mean, you're saying Terry kind of got it bad, but, you know, Jimmy did not get it much better, did he?
That's true. And of course, that means Tina has to be next. She was the one that was fooling around with Jimmy, and she gets thrown out of the second story window and lands on top of a car. That's a pretty good stunt, actually. You know, as far as the stunts go in this film, that looked pretty good.
I'm fairly certain that if you look at that stunt closely, you see the windows kind of pop out before she actually hits the car. But I could be wrong about that. It was something I was thinking about when I was watching it yesterday. But I agree. I actually thought, in hindsight, it was a pretty solid stunt, and they certainly did a good job with that.
And then Ted's up next. Yeah, he gets knifed in the back through the projector screen. This was awkward, right? Because he's kind of standing in front of the projector, thinks he sees somebody behind the projector. I mean, it's only a small room. He could just step to the left out of the projector's light. But instead, yeah, it comes from behind.
So he offs Ted through the projector, and then he moves upstairs, needing to dispose of Doug, who is still in the shower. And like Jason kind of comes into the bathroom and like he hears the door open, but Doug thinks it's Sarah. He keeps kind of like, you know, sweet talker to kind of come back into the shower and we can sing songs together or something like that, I think he says, you know. He opens up the door and Jason's there and basically pulverizes his face. It's quite brutal.
Yeah, it is. And when Sarah comes in and finds the aftermath and like his neck is sort of sliced down on that broken, glass shower door, oof. Rough.
So when Sarah returns, she actually finds him dead and she tries to flee the house. She's actually killed with a double bit axe. So what kill are we up to, man? What number's that? Number 12. So we've only got 3 more deaths. And you know what? Number 14 is controversial because it basically says Jason Voorhees dies. Now, does he? Because there's 7 more films.
This whole time, he's just hacked his way through all these teens. Every last one of them is now dead. And that leaves us with Trish, Tommy, and good old Rob. So Trish stumbles across Rob out there. He mistakes her for maybe being Jason. She finds his tent, goes in, and then for some reason he slices at the tent with a machete.
Yeah.
Scaring the crap out of her.
Yeah. Why did you do that? Why do you think there's a madman on the loose?
Yeah, exactly. And he lays out the whole thing about his sister and that he's out there looking for Jason. She says, well, there's, the house next door's been rented by a bunch of teenagers. That sends off some sort of alarm in Rob's mind. So they hike it on back to the house because, of course, Tommy's alone there. And, the power's out, nobody's around, and they start freaking out.
There's this whole sequence where they search the house and whatnot, and they end up in this basement area, and they go to, it's kind of a weird sequence to be truthful, man. I didn't really buy it all that much because they go down to the basement, they do a search, they don't find anything, well, as far as they're aware. They're walking back up the stairs, and then out of nowhere, Jason is like, it appears that he's like hiding under the stairs and he kind of like reaches up and grabs like one of their legs. He lets go somehow and Rob then goes back down the stairs to like confront Jason.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, he kind of gets pinned by him and he actually gets killed in a fairly brutal way. Like if I had to say like violent kind of kills for me, I'd probably say Rob's one was pretty brutal. I didn't really enjoy that.
Well, he goes out like a bit of a punk, really, right? This character's whole motivation is that he has hoofed it out to Crystal Lake to track down Jason and get that dude. He killed my sister. I want to get this dude. And the second he actually encounters Jason just hacks him to death. I don't know. It's just such an abrupt kill on that character. He gets like no fight at all. You think he would at least tussle with the guy or something, like anything.
So this leaves 2 people. We've got Trish and Tommy left for our cast. So Trish runs home after standing at the top of the stairs for what feels like an eternity. It's like, run away. What are you doing? Like,
I know she got away and went back and then stood there for like 20 minutes.
I know. She just stands there. It's like, what are you doing? Just run away. Anyway, she runs away and Jason kind of hightails it straight after her. And she actually gets back and she and Tommy actually barricade the house. But Jason actually breaks in and chases them into Tommy's room. Trish then lures Jason out of the house and escapes, then returns home and is devastated to learn that actually Tommy is actually still there. She senses Jason behind her and tries to kill him with a machete, but she actually misses, and then Jason actually attacks her. Now, before we go to right at the end, I just want to give some props because I thought Trish did pretty well to survive. Like, there was a dozen times where Jason could have killed her, not easily, but she did pretty well to kind of escape his clutches. I think that's the point I'm trying to make.
I agree. It's like Alice in the first one, right? Like, Alice made some smart moves, like barricading the door with the rope and stuff like that. Like, Trish kind of does the same thing, and she has to try and protect Tommy at the same time. Now, of course, Tommy, I don't understand this kid's logic, right? Because he started reading newspaper articles that Rob had on him about Jason.
Yes.
So he comes up with this plan, I guess, being some sort of special effects whiz that he is.
Yeah.
decides to shave his head to make himself look like the deformed Jason as a boy, and then come back down and sort of play on his sympathies.
That was my only understanding of the end of the film, is Corey Feldman shaved his head in the space of 18 seconds in the bathroom or whatever it was.
He also cut off his jeans into jean shorts for some reason.
Also kind of applies makeup on his face as well to kind of give him like a sullen kind of almost decrepit kind of look. And he comes downstairs and he just stares at Jason. He says, "Hey." Jason just kind of stares at him and just gets really, doesn't quite know what to make of who this kid is. Is it it's almost like Jason, you're right, he kind of plays him off for his sympathies, yeah? Yeah,
exactly. And I think this is supposed to be like part 2, right? Where what's-her-face put on the sweater and pretended to be Mrs. Voorhees, and Jason kind of falls for it. So, yeah, I don't know, it's a weird sequence. And then Trish manages to swing the machete up and knock the hockey mask off Jason's face. And he's even more freakishly deformed than we've seen in the last 2 movies, So in the span of 3 days, this guy's gone from somewhat deformed mountain man to just hideously mutated weirdo.
Did you like the fact that they kicked that hockey mask off his face? I suppose as an audience member you want to see what he looks like under, but you're always going to be disappointed because if anything, taking the hockey mask off Jason kind of humanizes him a little bit. It actually turns him into a person where, is Jason a person, Corey? I mean, we've had this discussion before, or is he this supernatural being that somehow kind of keeps coming back to life and lives in lakes all his life? You know what I mean? It's this strange kind of I don't really quite understand who he is as a character. Is he just a guy who's just crazy and pissed off about his mum and wants to kill everyone, or is he a mentally disturbed man? You know what I mean? It's hard to say.
They've just sort of beefed up the mythology from installment to installment, and it's just kind of hard to gauge exactly what the truth is anymore. It is whatever the writers want it to be, I guess, and whatever Tom Savini wants to come up with for the makeup.
As I said to you earlier on in the discussion, you could almost watch this film without watching any of the 3 previous ones and just watch it for what it is. You don't need to really know about Pamela Voorhees all that much to really watch this film. The bottom line is it's a crazy guy trying to kill some young people, essentially. That's what it is.
And then we get his big death scene at the hands of Tommy, of all people. And it is gory as this machete gets slammed into his skull, and then he falls to the ground and it slices his head open. They were really closing the chapter on the Jason storyline here with the way they kill him off.
To make matters worse as well, after the machete goes through the killer's skull and he collapses to the floor, he's talking to Trish, who's obviously, trying to calm him down and are you okay and all that kind of stuff. And just in the corner of his eye, Tommy notices that Jason's fingers are actually moving, and out of nowhere, he just keeps hacking at the body, just yelling, "Die, die, 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 die." That's where we kind of finish the film. But there is another scene, and a very important scene too, isn't there?
This is kind of just leaving it open a little bit to maybe make you think that in future installments, Tommy will be our killer.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what the future installments are. I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, I did look at some character names, especially in the next film, and I did notice Tommy Jarvis was a recurring character. So it would be, I'm looking forward to seeing whether he shows up again and actually takes Jason on, or is Tommy now Jason? It's hard to tell, isn't it? I really don't know. I haven't seen these films. The last shot of the film is, as you say, it kind of leaves this ambiguous kind of idea of what Tommy's going to be in the future installments, but he kind of rushes in and gives Trish a hug and then kind of stares at the camera and gives this really disturbed look. I actually found it a little off-putting.
It's very creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's really creepy. I can't believe that they didn't clean him up when they took him to the hospital.
I know, at least maybe finish shaving his head. He's still got all those tufts of hair hanging out everywhere. But yeah, it is a creepy look, creepy still to end the film on.
So should we get into the clips, man?
Yeah, let's check out the remaining clips I've got, all right?
Sounds good.
So I've got Terry trying to get Tina to leave with her.
Tina, you gotta go. You go. Tina, I'm gonna leave without you.
Take an umbrella.
Doesn't she sound British?
She does sound a little British.
It's like, I think the actor, well, I guess both of them, might be British.
Yeah,
and I
maybe.
think that was coming back through in that scene.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, you're right. I could hear something in there, but I wasn't paying too much attention, truthfully.
So where she says, I'm going to leave without you. You know, it kind of just it had that British kind of feel to it.
Hey, Corey, was that your method acting English accent? Is that right?
Yep.
I am the character.
I am the character. I'm going to leave without you.
No.
And then she, yeah. So her twin sister just like palms her off. But Terry comes back with this singer.
You slut!
Oh, you slut. Nice.
You slut!
I might keep that clip.
Yeah, do it. It's quite good. I like it.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to have that character in every film.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, Crispin Glover looking for the corkscrew.
Cool.
Hey, Ted, where's that corkscrew, that fancy corkscrew for the wine bottle? Ted? Hey! Ted! Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's the corkscrew?
The fancy corkscrew for the wine bottle.
It's like a typical corkscrew as well. You
Yeah.
know, just with the handles.
Yeah.
Somehow that's a fancy corkscrew, apparently.
Oh, okay. What's the next one, man?
Typical chick reaction.
Sarah, I think I'm in heaven.
I think I'm in love.
What?
I'll meet you in the bottom bunk.
I'll meet you in the bottom bunk.
Oh, that's so funny. The fact that she says, I think I'm in love, and he says, what? Like, that's not the response you want.
This poor girl, she's waited this whole time, and then she's met this great guy who looks like a hell of a lot like Jared Leto.
She's the virgin too. Like, is this really kind of how she wants to lose her virginity? This is the story she's got. You know, the fact that she told some guy that she loved him, who said what?
And oh man, I had to grab this clip because this is Rob being murdered, and just what he was yelling out as Jason was hacking him to death. Have a listen to this. Oh my God, he's killing me.
Oh my God, he's killing him. And she doesn't run. She's like, run. And she doesn't run. She just stands there.
Oh my God. Best reaction to being murdered ever. To
Yeah.
yell, oh my God, he's killing me.
I know. Like, you wouldn't be swearing or anything like that. He's probably getting like a cleaver in the face. And I can't imagine it'd be very violent killing.
Oh man. Great.
Yeah.
All right, well, shall we give this one ratings, recommend? What do you think?
I'm kind of leaning towards the recommend. I think I'm going to give this, 6.5 Tommies from me. I think I'm kind of at that point. I like this film. I didn't love it. If I was going to rate all of the Friday the 13th so far, I'd probably go 2, 4, 1, and 3. I remember you loved number 3. I found it a bit cheesy, but I personally was actually happy to not have the 3D effects rush at me in this film. I like this film. I think I like the fact that they try to connect the dots a little bit between the previous ones, even though it didn't really make a lot of sense. And as you stated earlier in the film, I think the filmmaking chops on display are clearly a little bit more prominent in this one. And it's actually given me a little bit of hope for the rest of the series. I think in my mind, I'd cast off Friday the 13th a little bit prior to us watching this, and I'd never really entertained the thought of watching them. And as much as I'm not going to say they're masterpieces, they're kind of fun, and I can kind of see why people like them, and I can see why they did well as well back in the day too. So as I said, I'm leaning towards a slight recommend. Not a strong one, a slight one. Probably 6.5 Tommies out for me. What about you?
I'm pretty much around the same place you are. I'm going to give this one 7 fancy corkscrews out of 10. 7
fancy corkscrews. Nice.
Like I said, I think this one's better made. It's definitely very well shot. And I like a lot of the stunts. And, we said it in the first one. You got to come into these ones for the kills. I mean, it's morbid, I know. But if you can have Jason do some creative kills, then I think that's actually what makes it fun. And this one had a fair few of them. The story, whatever, The fact that nobody kind of reacts to the fact that a bunch of people have been killed is ridiculous. Rob showing up after a couple of days after his sister was killed, acting like, Jason's mythology is the end-all be-all. Again, I'm a bit like, eh. But, as far as it goes, Crispin Glover, he kind of saves the movie for me. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Crispin Glover is pretty good. And I thought Feldman was pretty good too.
I did like Feldman.
I kept thinking of the Goonies when I was watching him, thinking, man, that's like so like not far away for you. Like that's like the next year or whatever it is. And that movie's a classic. So
all right, so our next episode, believe it or not, this was not the final chapter because the next one is Friday the 13th, A New Beginning.
Number 5 it is, made in 1985. So strap yourself in.
So guys, for more great podcasts from Golden Sparrow Media, make sure you head on over to goldensparrowmedia.com. Be sure to join us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast and on Twitter at rewatchpod. And also, please consider giving us a rate and review on your podcast app of choice. That's very much appreciated. And don't forget, we're up on YouTube. You can find every last episode there. All right, Nathan, a lot of fun as always. Thank you for joining me.
They're fun chats, man. I'm enjoying them. I'm enjoying watching them. And don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to getting to the end, but they're fun chats nonetheless.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that just leaves me to say, until next time, he's killing me. He's killing me.
And I'll give you something to remember us by.
Golden Spiral Media and the Rewatch podcast are not associated with the copyright holders of these films, and no copyright infringement is intended.
They were making love while that young boy drowned.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is solely for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes, as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog.
Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Cool, JJ. Parents really came through.
Copyright 2017, Golden Spiral Media.
You're a dead meat, slime bag.